Welcome to Seasons of Life, a biblical perspective for how to navigate life's ups and downs. Do you feel overwhelmed? Or do you feel successful? Experiencing loss? This weekly 15-minute word of inspiration will motivate you to live with more wisdom and peace. Here is your host, Pastor Mercy Oduah.
Hello, welcome once again to Seasons of Life. This Seasons of Life program is a biblical perspective for handling your life challenges. I want you to know that seasons of life are regular occurrences of life, the good and the not so good. My inspiration aspires to offer you with biblical support and guidance as you go through the ups and downs of life. I am sharing from my seasons of life experiences, hoping they will benefit you as you go through the challenging seasons of your life. So if you're watching me for the first time, kindly subscribe and share this video on your platform so that we can become a community of care and support. Today, episode 39, we examine the problems we face with repositioning and offer suggestions on how to handle them. You know that for the past 2 weeks, we have been talking about repositioning, what it means, and the blessings. So now we are going to talk about the problems that you can encounter as you try to reposition. And I have my lovely daughter once again to share the problems that she encountered during her repositioning. I will let her introduce herself one more time.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back. Season of Life community. My name is Chika, and I'm very eager to share some of the challenges that you may encounter and the ones that I encountered upon repositioning.
Okay. You know, most times we fail to follow the current of life because we are stuck in our old position. And that old position can be our old mindset, our location, our jobs, or relationship. We fail to flow with the current of life because we are stuck in our old mindset, our old job, career, relationship, and so forth. I want you to know that God does new things every day, including positioning and repositioning. Our God is not stagnant. God is not stagnant in one place. I like what the book of Isaiah chapter 43 verse 19 says. It says, "Behold, I am doing a new thing now. It springs forth. Do you perceive it?" God is saying that He is doing a new thing, and that new thing is springing forth. And are you perceiving it? That is a question for you. And I want you to know, too, that He says that He will make a way in the wilderness. In the wilderness, He will give rivers in the wilderness. And it takes repositioning to see the way in the wilderness of life. You just cannot stay in one place and expect miracle. It takes repositioning to see a way in the wilderness of life, whatever wilderness that you are in, dryness, obstacles, it takes repositioning. And that's what God is telling you in the book of Isaiah chapter 14:19. Also, we must know that repositioning brings blessing to us. So we must not be afraid of it. But however, repositioning is not easy. There are challenges, and I will examine those challenges today. I will use 2 biblical examples that point to the fact that we make mistakes when we are trying to reposition. And my daughter is here too to share her own challenges. So the first challenges I am going to look at is the challenges of distraction. When you get that feeling, that call, that sense to reposition, watch for distraction. Using the story of Abraham, when God instructed Abraham to get out of his country and from his family to a place so that he can bless him, what did Abraham do? Genesis chapter 12 verse 4 says that Abraham departed as the Lord commanded him. But guess what? He took his nephew named Lot with him. He took his nephew with him. But in that instruction, God did not ask him to go with Lot. God did not ask him specifically to go with Lot, his nephew. So the question is, why did Abraham take his nephew along? Why did he? Maybe because of sentiment, family commitment, but that's not good. That's a kind of distraction because strife developed between the two of them down the line. In Genesis chapter 13 verse 7, the Bible tells us that they had to part, they had to separate because of strife between their cattlemen. So that is a distraction right there. So what is the lesson that we're learning? The lesson is that you have to be careful of distraction. When God is trying to reposition you, leave the lots behind. Whatever lot is to you, it might be your family, friends, and mindset. Just leave it behind. Avoid sentiments. And as a matter of fact, this is the time for you to be more prayerful, because prayer will guide you in your seasons of repositioning. And also, you must acknowledge God to avoid distraction so that He can direct your path. Then the next problem that we have to deal with as we go through transitioning is the problem of fear. Yes, that is a big one. A problem of fear. Fear is normal, but it can also be disastrous because it will make you to take the wrong decision and then you lose your focus. So we see in that story of Abraham as well that fear played a part. Fear played a role in his decision. When Abraham found himself in Egypt, he was afraid that the people would take his wife and kill him because his wife Sarah was beautiful. So what did he do? Abraham convinced his wife Sarah to lie that she was his sister and not his wife. Can you imagine? So Sarah lied that she was Abraham's sister instead of the wife. That was not good. That decision was based on fear. And what happened? It made his matter even worse because now the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, took Abraham's wife into his palace as his wife, not knowing that Sarah was Abraham's wife and not sister. And then there was fire on the mountain in the household of Pharaoh because God was angry at Pharaoh. The anger of God came upon Pharaoh because he took somebody else's wife. But I will not blame Abraham. I will not blame Pharaoh because he did not know that Sarah was Abraham's wife. But God, in his mercy, delivered Pharaoh. And when Pharaoh finally found out that Sarah was Abraham's wife, he quickly returned Sarah back to Abraham. So what are we learning? Do not make decisions with fear. When you are repositioning yourself, there is a tendency for fear to come in. But I want you to fight your fear with faith. Fight that fear with faith. Trust God for whatever will happen. The challenges, the problem, do not be overwhelmed with fear. Rather, you trust God at that particular time. And one way to do that is to walk by faith and not by sight. That was the mistake that Abraham made. He was looking at his circumstances, walking by fear and not by faith. And then he came to this big lie. So the next problem we are going to talk about, which I will have my daughter discuss, is the problem of culture shock. Culture shock. If you are trying to reposition to a new place, to a new job, whatever, even to a new mindset, there is a shock that will follow you. You will be shocked about the situation, the circumstances of that environment. So I will let my daughter share a little bit on her culture shock when she was trying to reposition from America to Africa as a journalist. Over to you, Miss Chika.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your elaboration of the two challenges of fear and distraction, because these two challenges I have encountered on my own path,
Mm.
when it comes to repositioning. And I'm sure that these two things of fear and distraction, many of us can relate to this. And obviously, these can be stumbling blocks. Another stumbling block when it comes to repositioning is certainly that of culture shock.
Mm.
And this is something that speaks to me very strongly, as someone who's very interested in trying to understand culture wherever I am. The best way to describe culture shock, I think, is a sense of anxiety or discomfort when confronting a society that's different from the one that you're familiar with. And so it can come as a shock, just like almost like a panic. And it can be a very gradual type of shock, or it can be very quick and acute. So I've experienced culture shock, definitely in the arena of just relocating to a different society. Some people can experience it if they're going to a new job environment. You may not know the culture of that space, of that company, that organization, or even a different school. So culture shock is a very real danger, and it's something that you have to take considerably. You have to be very conscious of that reality. So, for example, when I left the United States and moved to Africa, the first country I moved to was Kenya. And then after that was Nigeria. And now I'm based in Senegal. So, with each different country I find myself in, it's always a different culture that I'm confronting. And so, for me, some of the things that shocked me, for example, was things like how men and women relate to one another. Some of these cultures that I go to are a bit more conservative. So sometimes you may find things like patriarchy, where men tend to dominate women in a very overt way. So that's something that I encounter a lot. But other different cultural customs, things like that, you just have to be very attuned to the space where you are. And I think the best way to overcome culture shock is to sit quietly and observe. Observe. Do less talking and more listening. There's a proverb that says that we have one mouth and two ears, because I think God wants for us to listen more than we talk. So when you're in a new space, the best way to overcome culture shock is to just sit back and see how other people are approaching those situations. And that's how I've been able to overcome culture shock. But don't let culture shock stop you from repositioning, because culture shock can also, if you're not careful, it can lead to prejudice, discriminating. You may say, oh, I don't like those people. They do this. I don't like this language. It sounds like this. I don't like this country. It's like this. So you're letting those experiences block you from moving forward. And that could obviously be a hindrance to your own development, your spiritual development. So don't be afraid of culture shock. You have to embrace it. It's going to come because every community that you encounter is going to be different from the one that you're familiar with. So just come with the mindset of learning and humility, and you will certainly overcome the very real issue of culture shock.
Wow, that is very powerful. That is a good information. So, in trying to reposition, we encounter culture shock. I think too, Abraham encountered culture shock because Abraham now, encounter pagan community, people who were not worshiping God, idol worshippers. But God, we have to trust God when we come to a new place. And sometimes too, you learn from those culture. Is that not true?
Sure,
Yes.
absolutely.
Sometimes we learn, just like she said, we have to be patient with our repositioning and trust that God has gone ahead. God has gone ahead to make a way for you. So you will be the one to stop yourself because of culture shock.
And if I can add one more element with culture shock, you don't want to bring your own way of doing things and say, this is how I do it, because you can obviously, that can create friction in the new community where you're trying to live.
Yes.
So don't try to dominate and bring your own habits to the space.
Okay. I know you were, raised in America. What about their food? They don't have all the good things that we enjoy in the West. So how were you able to deal with the food, the security, the light, and all those things that we hear?
Sure. I mean, the amenities are very different. Infrastructure in some of the countries where I've mentioned, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, are quite different from what I've lived through in the United States. But again, it's all about humility. You really have to be open minded. You have to understand that every community is different. Do not come with the expectation that it's going to be the same. Do not come with that expectation. Be open minded. Be flexible. Be willing to adapt because that adaptability is what makes you strong. So don't come with that harsh mindset or else you will not be able to make friends. So you have to just be flexible in life. One example I like to use are the trees outside. If you look at trees, especially the older trees, they're very strong and sturdy. But if you look very closely, they bend with the wind. Because if they're to stand like this, they snap. So God has made trees so that they bend like this, and that makes them actually stronger. So we should always be willing to go, don't compromise your morality or your ethics, but just be willing to adapt to different types of people. And that will give you the strength that you need to overcome culture shock and to enjoy the repositioning that God has instructed you to embark upon.
All right. That is very good. Thank you so much, Miss Chika. So we have seen three problems that you can encounter as you are trying to reposition in life. The first one we dealt was fear. We saw the problem of fear with Abraham, and then distraction, and finally culture shock. And we have equally offered suggestions on how to deal with those. But the bottom line is bend, flow with the current. Do not let anything stop your repositioning. So as I close, I want you to meditate on the book of Isaiah chapter 43 verse 19. God is telling you that he is doing a new thing in your life and he will make a way in the wilderness. But it takes repositioning to find that new thing that God is doing in your life because God is not stagnant. So, as I close, I pray May the Lord bless you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you. And may he give you the grace to reposition if you feel the season of reposition is calling you. If you have a comment, suggestions, just feel free to drop them on our comment section. And so I conclude this topic on repositioning. Next week, we are going to start with something new and exciting. Shalom, and see you next week.
Thank you for watching this episode of Seasons of Life. Until next time, be well, and may God bless you.